Congressman Chris Murphy recently hosted a panel discussion with Carol Browner, Assistant to the President for Energy and Climate Change at the Hill-Stead Museum in Farmington. The panel focused on the promise that green energy advancements hold for our environment and for Connecticut's economy. Joining Browner and Murphy were representatives from Connecticut-based renewable energy businesses, including Apollo Solar, FuelCell Energy, Duracell, and Optiwind. Here's what they had to say.
Today is the third potential of this bill, which is to show us the path forward on a new economy and a new strategy for growing jobs. The bill does that primarily through relying on market mechanisms to incentivize the private sector and private investors to invest in renewable energy technology by establishing a cap-and-trade system that accurately prices the true cost of old carbon-based energy and puts renewable energy sources like battery technology, wind technology, solar technology, and fuel cell technology on an even playing. The last 2 decades, Carol has been this country's leading voice for the future of clean energy and the importance of our continued commitment to environmental protection. She heads the newly created White House Office of Energy and Climate Change. She also serves as the Assistant to the President for Energy and Climate.
We can change the future of our country. We believe we can change how we think about energy, how we use energy, and we believe that the issue of climate change and global warming is just the opposite side of the same coin, that you have to do these things together. They have to be thought of in a comprehensive manner. It remains a very, very important priority for the President. He has said repeatedly there are 3 things he wants Congress to do this year. There's all the normal things you all have to do, but he wants health care, he wants energy, and he wants financial regulatory reform. The bill, sometimes referred to as the Stimulus Act or the Recovery Act, has $80 billion for investments in clean energy. But what this is about was going out across the country and making investments in everything from new battery technologies, new solar technology, wind technologies, modernizing and weatherizing our homes, appliances. We believe that there's just a whole set of things we can do today to put us on a path where we are less dependent on foreign oil, put us on a path where we double the number of renewables we're using. It's taken us 35 years to get to about 35% renewable content in this country, and we think through the money we will be spending and investing from the Recovery Act, we can double that in the next 3 to 4 years. You can explain it far better than I can, but renewables need to move on a different type of transmission line. And for where the large-scale renewables are likely to be cited, the Class 5 winds as to the Class 1 or 2, are in parts of the country, and similarly with some of the solar, where we don't have the transmission lines and we don't have large population centers. So we're going to have to bring these renewables from these areas to the areas where the people are, and that means really having a bigger system. The way, and you guys are probably aware of this, but the way we have decided to regulate electricity production in this country is on a state-by-state basis. And you have these things called public utility commissions or public service commissions, and they're all operate under state laws that are fairly similar, which only allows them to pass on the cost to the electric consumer, that portion of the generation associated with what that consumer is going to use, and similarly that portion of the transmission system. That's a long way of saying you're going to bring the winds from the Dakotas to Chicago. You may go through some states with lines that don't get any of the benefits. And so how we deal with that kind of transmission, not just siting, but pricing, is proving to be very, very difficult. When we talk about making it better, we have a lot of leakage in this system these days. We are losing a lot of electricity, and if you think about all of the environmental consequences associated with the production of every kilowatt, megawatt, the idea that we're not optimizing the transmission lines and being able to make decisions and manage it. You know, again, it's done on a state-by-state. There are now regional interconnects there where people work together, but we don't have a unified system. And maybe we shouldn't, and maybe we can't because of the history that's gotten us to this point, but we certainly need to invest in making our grid work much, much better than it's working today.
Can I just jump in? All 4 of us, I think, are distributed energy technologies, which are all about siting your power generation source or storage right at the point of use, which eliminates the need for all the grid investment. not all the
Right.
grid, some of the grid investment. But, so I think that part of the solution is always going to have to be, are there ways where we can localize our distribution, the power generation?
It's giving consumers, I think, access to information. You know, one of the things that they have demonstrated in some pilot projects is that when people can actually look at their meter, and it's not that thing that sits outside your house with that little thing that twirls around and you have no idea when it's going faster or slower, but it's actually a computer screen in your house, and you can look at it and see, wow, when I sleep, I'm using all that energy. What could it possibly be? Oh, well, it's the one light in the kitchen that I'm choosing to leave on, which turns out to be the most inefficient light in my house. So we're about to have a whole new generation of what they call smart appliances. You can do things that some of you may already know that my new refrigerator, I can push a button when I go on vacation, and it ramps down the amount of electricity it's using, because I'm essentially telling it I'm not going to be opening and closing that door 50 times. In the course of a day or in the course of a weekend. And so what we tried to do in putting the package together was really think about these component parts. I think what you all did in the energy legislation was trying to think about how to resolve some of the siting and larger transmission issues. And I think, you know, the hardest issue in there is both the pricing, like who pays for the transmission lines, and then secondly, what kind of authority would you use in the event people didn't want the lines, and would that be an appropriate exercise of some sort of state or federal? I think that's going to continue to be a part of the debate. One of the problems we have is, again, the way we built our electric system is we rewarded electric companies only for the sale of more electricity. And the degree to which we can decouple their profits and there can be some upside for efficiency, I think the more likely the utilities are to engage in efficiency. Putting a cap on carbon will have, I think, a significant impact in terms of investments in efficiencies, because once you put a cap on carbon, what the emitters, the polluters want to do is find the cheapest solution, and in many instances, enhanced efficiency will be the cheapest solution. We spent a lot of time with the private sector saying, what do you need to make large-scale investments in new energy technologies? And if there's one consistent answer I hear, it's put a cap on the dangerous pollutants that cause greenhouse gases. Because once you do that, once Congress starts that program, you will give a type of predictability and certainty to the private investors that if they make an investment, there will be a return on that investment. And we've seen this before in the environmental arena. We saw this in 1990. I was a young staff person working for then Senator Gore when the Congress debated the Clean Air Act of 1990, just a really historic piece of legislation. And I was on the floor during a debate about banning CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons, which were contributing, a freon, a gas used in refrigeration, contributing to the hole in the upper ozone. And there were senators who took to the floor to say, if we ban this, we won't have air conditioning because there's no known alternative. And it was true, there was no known alternative. But once Congress made that decision, said it is gone on a date certain, there was an opportunity, a business opportunity got created. And so we found a solution. We didn't, the private sector found a solution much more quickly and for much less money than had been anticipated, because we had created this guaranteed opportunity. All afternoon telling you stories where environmental regulations, environmental laws have created opportunities, and American innovation and ingenuity has risen to the occasion. You know, the people who do not want to pass comprehensive energy legislation are betting against American innovation and ingenuity, and we simply can't continue to do that. There is too much opportunity for all of us to, if we simply decide to change our energy future, to do it in a rational and reasonable way, to give businesses opportunities that will not only become opportunities here and change the quality of our lives, but also position them to compete in a global growing market.
Well said. And it is just thrilling for us to have you with us today, to be able to hear your thoughts on the direction of this policy, to know that we are in good hands in Washington, and to know that maybe we'll get you to come back here to join us in a celebration when we complete this journey, get a bill passed, and continue to grow the type of jobs that are represented here on this panel. So, Carol, to everyone here, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.